my very first in the series and perhaps one that will always remain prominent in the lineup. This piece was inspired by one of the early historic images of the Windrush ship, featured a viewpoint of the back of the ship as it arrives in the UK, filled with passengers ready for a new life while rebuilding the empire. It was in May of 1948 when the HMT Empire Windrush, formerly a German troop ship called the Monte Rosa, made its rounds in the Caribbean by way of Trinidad, Jamaica, and Bermuda. The purpose of this voyage was to bring eager West Indians as part of a Commonwealth contingent by Great Britain to rebuild the empire after the Second World War. In this series, I use tea elements as a metaphor for brotherhood, a welcoming gesture, and honor. In Storm in a Teacup, the breach can be seen clearly in the ornate chinaware, summoning a fast leak of corruption that has brewed over decades to the present scandal as we know it. As the voyage of many set sail to Britain, little did they realize how turbulent the future would be. May Day symbolizes the well-dressed man as he thinks of the comforts and opportunities abound at the other side of the ocean. There were people of many professions on the Windrush, including nurses, masons, carpenters, drivers, and soldiers. They would prove very useful in the UK for their hard work and dedication. But the issue of race became a block in much of society's minds. The man overboard has not been recognized, his dreams of comfort and opportunity shortchanged. As the ocean tides threaten the journey, a tropical depression develops, as the Atlantic reminds us of a familiar story in history involving many boat trips of our ancestors to the islands. The Windrush story, in my mind, embodies a parallel of deceit and exploitation. Water is important in the Windrush saga, as it is a symbolic reminder of our history as Black people. The transportation to our struggles riddled with obstacles. In 1948, a passenger opportunity to the UK arose. It became apparent in the media in an ad clip in newspapers in the West Indies, a rally call for all able-bodied British citizens. For 28 or 48 pounds, one could afford this opportunity. Paper cut represents a call to service. I say service as that is what the black race has always been called to do while getting little in return. Hence the use of the spoon filled with sugar. But this is no ordinary spoon. It is adorned with a compass of meanings. The Windrush anchor means the search for stable grounding, as many West Indians were looking for better opportunities abroad and felt that service would be the perfect trade-off in this venture. As the ads of the time were read as eager hearts and eyes looked at the future, the yoke of our existence in servitude is hidden in the fine print when promises fold to paper cuts. The stirring of British West Indian history comes to a head as we try to mix a sweet future. Over the years since the first ship arrived in London, and many arrivals after that, there had been a long-standing question among politicians and some citizens in the predominantly white community. How long do we sustain the immigrant problem? The racism and suppression of basic human rights have been long since echoed throughout the decades in modern Britain. Something brewing on the horizon. Brixton Brewing is the sum of the minority retaliation to years of suppression, police brutality, marginalization, and even gentrification of the black community. The piece focuses on a teacup cracked in a saucer trying to hold together under the heat of fire and protest. I felt the billowing smoke an important message to show the magnitude of racial tensions in Britain, especially in the early 1980s. Around the rim of the cup stands a motif of people symbolizing unity for the cause. Sediment, while not so much a protest piece as Brixton, highlights specifically torn pieces of the original Windrush Journeys manifest. Fill the cup in a cup, a symbolic statement of "we don't want you here." The whole scene is framed by the motif of the black community standing side by side. Deportation has been an ongoing part of the British immigration construct for decades, but the most scandalous of all situations in modern Britain has been the forged expelling of British West Indians, largely those who have legitimate UK citizenship. Deportee is an inviting cup, no cracks or burning on the outside. But inside is a different story. It all went down the drain. The spoon is waiting to add the sugar and mix, but there's nothing to mix because the substance is gone. This is a symbolic of trickery or false intentions experienced by many blacks in Britain. I have seen the effects here in Jamaica with deportations in many numbers coming back, ejected from a system that they have established a life for many years. Baggage claim echoes a similar sentiment, although this time it goes into more detail, such as used tea bags piled on each other, creating a build-up, while its strings lay outside of the cup, displaying immigration stamps and denial status. In addition, there's a face on one of the tags, barely seen but relevant. I rarely use persons directly in my work, but sometimes I do this to create a more personal effect among the other symbolism displayed. The drainage still goes on today. A justice for many and reunification with families are still yet to happen. We have seen the apparatus of punishment and persecution many times over the centuries. We have seen Jim Crow fly by night, plucking the humanity and culture from our backs. The reusables vividly reminds us of this persecution that the Windrush generation went through. The protests, the beatings, the Stephen Lawrences who lay a martyr for change in a divided Britain. The hangman's noose erected emerging from the tides as it hangs, a tea bag to be used again and again while swaying in the wind. Broken promises lay on the sands beneath as a reminder of the reception the destined manifest thought they would receive. As the empire's pot pours, the spout still remains dark-skinned, a symbol of how servitude became the purpose of an underprivileged generation. The emblem on the pot says it all. Am I not a man and a brother? Perhaps when we can have our tea and drink it, or when the outstretched hand receives it. As the Windrush generation fights on to prove their rightful place in society, a privilege that should always be a natural status, one cannot forget those that keep the flame burning for the next generation to hold. A wind rise that keeps rising as the horse from the ocean. Night of Dawn was my opportunity and perhaps my only piece in a series to feature the almost full profile of the ship itself, as it eventually sank in the Mediterranean waters in 1954. For many, it has never sank. The voices and the cries for justice, the bullhorns and social media has kept it in clear, shallow depths until one day it shall emerge and secrets will no longer be submerged. A new dawn lays ahead for those who fight for it. We have come to know the major monumental struggles and triumphs of the black race through the centuries in human rights, science, and even sports. But the point of the greatest sacrifice has often come through warfare. The Drop is a painting specifically tailored in commemoration of the British West Indian troops in World War II. I have choreographed the tea bags in a falling parachute motion, which was often a method of deploying troops at the time. The major element of note is the use of British dog tags, forever etching the heroic exploits of the Negro combatant into history. But whose history? He's great on the battlefield, but second class coming off the ship to Tilbury's docks. A deepening undertow in a land he calls empire. The wars are fought with selflessness, and now the bricks of the Blitz must be picked up by shattered hands. Perhaps an undertow transpired at Tilbury docks, a tarnished reception and a begging of acceptance. We have come to know the truths of our filtering today. One day we'll make a perfect brew. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember to check out my website at studiomichaelelliott.com.